Hey guys, how are y'all doing? It's Mr. Burnett here. Can't wait to see you in person. But for those of you that are quarantined or virtual next week, I want to go over this presentation really quickly, and this will help you answer the 20 LMS questions that go along with it. For my in-class students, I'll be doing a live lecture. And again, any of you virtual learners that have any questions for me, please message me, email me with anything that you have some uncertainty with. I do want to be very clear that there's no way on planet Earth I can cover all the different things about Reconstruction. It is so crazy full of things that happen in a 12-year window of time that is as crazy and as messy as the bricks that are destroyed in this image. And I feel like one of the guys standing in the bricks over here trying to make sense of this era. It's insane. So Reconstruction is what this is all about, post-Civil War, and the Reconstruction era is one of the aspects after the Civil War where you've got to rebuild a lot of things that have been torn down. Systems, political systems, economic systems, cultural systems, social systems. The whole thing's going to have to be rebuilt, and it's going to be easier said than done. So hang on. I'm going to go through this fast and try to help you understand as best as possible what this is all about. Reconstruction is generally, like it says in my slide, a period after the Civil War, about 12 years long technically, but the ramifications will be felt all the way into the 1960s, and we're still dealing with a lot of the issues from it today, and systemic racism that you've heard about, and various issues that our country's still wrestling out. And honestly, I think it's kind of odd. One of the things about this era that ends the Reconstruction era are called the Redeemers. And the Redeemers are Democrats in the South that try to make the South back into a democratic mold in hopes that their way of life can be back to the way it used to be. You and I know, and I'm not trying to just shove a truth in here to make it fit, but Christ Jesus at the cross, where there is neither Greek, Jew, black, white, male, female, rich, poor, at the cross is where every hope of redemption flows. And Christ is the only Redeemer. It is not a Southern Democrat. It is not a Northern Republican. It is not Joe Biden. It is not Donald Trump. It is Jesus Christ alone. It is Him crucified that has the power to redeem a human heart, because that's where you need the surgery the most. And it's not a political mindset. It's a heart problem. So this is an effort, though, by the Republicans to influence the post-Civil War South to rebuild it in a way where you're going to allow equality and justice for former slaves and rebuild the South in a way that doesn't end up back to the place that it was when the Civil War started. And it's usually going to be an era marked with a lot of corruption, scandal, and resentment from Southerners against the Northern influences, and then a lot of division within the South of what they want to rebuild the South like. So there's a lot of brokenness, enmity between the sides, broken economy, et cetera, and it's going to take a long time to fix. Over the entire era, from basically Andrew Johnson, who takes over when Lincoln's assassinated, to U.S. Grant, who was the former general of the Union armies at the end of the Civil War, to all these other jokers that you probably don't know much about. Benjamin Harrison over here, Chester Arthur right here. What a good-looking guy. What's this guy's name? Benjamin Harrison. No, that's Rutherford B. Hayes. We all love him, I know. Grover Cleveland, the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. And then William McKinley. I don't think I put Garfield in here. Daggum, he got shot and killed in 1881, assassinated. This is Benjamin Harrison. On and on and on. These guys are some of the lesser-known presidents in American history. But as you can see, places like Richmond destroyed, Georgia destroyed from Sherman's ruthless tactics, Charleston, South Carolina, and most of South Carolina destroyed. I've been on these sidewalks numerous times. I've done a devotion in that church with my students years ago. I've been all up and down these places on this is Broad Street, just Charleston's leveled. Soldiers are wounded in the hundreds of thousands. PTSD is, I can't even imagine what these men are going through in their hearts and minds from after the Civil War. Not only their legs and arms missing, just a lot of brokenness. And as Lincoln said, our job to reconstruct is also to rehabilitate and bind up the nation's wounds and care for those who have borne the injuries of the war, and make sacred the places where they died for the nation, but don't let the nation go back to where it was. So as Lincoln is president at the end of 1865 or the end of 1864, he starts thinking about Reconstruction. and starts to come up with plans and starts talking with congressional leaders about how to reconstruct the South. And his plan essentially becomes known as the 10% plan of Lincoln. And he's going to try to replace the majority rule with loyal rule in the South, to do it in such a way that doesn't create more bitterness and enmity, and to genuinely bind up the nation's wounds and not punish harshly those Confederates and those Southerners who fought the Union during the Civil War. So he's going to pardon. His plan is to pardon all citizens, except the highest ranking military and political leaders like Jeff Davis and some of the higher ranking generals like like Lee and like Longstreet. Many of them died. Joseph E. Johnson would be one. And also then, this is the big one, once 10% of a state like North Carolina, when its voting population in 1860, when 10% of them have taken an oath of loyalty back into the United States, then that state could start the process of getting back into the Union upon congressional approval, which would be easier said than done. But then you have the other side of things, and like the radical Republicans, the Charles Sumners of the North, and the Wade Davis bill that is passed or tried to be pushed in the North to really make it very hard, because they don't want the South to be reborn in the mold and the way it was before. So there's two different viewpoints. And the Republicans are really driving this, but there is a growing congressional voice from the Democrats in the North from the 1864 elections. And like we talked about last week, McClellan almost won the presidential election of 1864. So it's not like totality of Republican control. It's just really messy. Just one of the famous political cartoons of Lincoln and Johnson trying to mend the nation back together. Look at my hashtag, Hunger Games. Most of you have seen that movie series. One of the ways they're going to do this is place post-Civil War all the southern states into 5 military districts, and basically place U.S. military forces, the federal troops, in all of these districts, led by one of the former generals of the Civil War from the Union, guys like Phil Sheridan, who's in charge of Texas and Louisiana. And they basically have established martial law over these southern states that are broken and destroyed. And when the last southern troops went home, put down their arms, and went back to be citizens again, they're now under the rule of military governors until those states can reapply for statehood. And as you can see, these two dates, the dates on top in each state are when they get back into the Union, and then the dates under that are each state becoming democratic, solidly Democratic, led by Democratic senators and congressmen and Senate Democratic governors. So honestly, you can see in this map, the Southerners are not going to lay down easily, and they're going to reestablish their world back in that model of the Democratic control, and they're going to go through some pretty interesting methods to do so. This is going to be president initially over Reconstruction because Abraham Lincoln gets assassinated, and Andrew Johnson is sworn in as the 17th president. And as you can see, his mentality is going to shape the Reconstruction process. Would not go along with the Lincoln heart, so I wish Lincoln would never have gotten killed, and I think the Reconstruction process would have been much differently handled. So as you can see, Andrew Johnson wants to help rebuild the South, but do it in a way that lets the states kind of run it and not have much influence from the Republicans, which is going to bring him into a lot of kind of headbutting with the Republicans in Congress as a Southerner from Tennessee. So the groups that are influencing Reconstruction are many. They're numerous. Number one, mostly the Freedmen's Bureau is a big government organization that is led by people that want to come down to the South and help out the former slaves with education and housing and food and clothing and basically missionaries in a large way to try to bring them up from where they were and get them on equal footing into a society that has always seen them as slaves. Then you have groups like the Carpetbaggers who are going to rush down south from the north as fast as they can, and that's why they're called carpetbaggers, because their suitcases were usually made of cheap carpet. They left as fast as they could to make a buck, make some money off of the broken situation in the South. And then you've got the guys that are really seen as bad, and those are the scalawags. And the scalawags are usually Southerners helping out the radical Republicans rebuild the South. And they were hated amongst most Southerners, as I said here, like Jewish tax collectors helping the Roman Empire. That's why people couldn't believe that Jesus chose Matthew as one of the disciples, because he was a tax collector as a Jew for the Romans, and they didn't like it at all. And then the most famous or infamous is the Ku Klux Klan ex-Confederate generals started in Tennessee, led by Nathan Bedford Forrest, and then started to grow and spread until they were in every state to basically resist any efforts by the Republicans and to really intimidate black men from voting once the 15th Amendment was passed. And just some images of carpetbaggers, notorious in the South, hated in the South, mocked in the South, punked on by the South. The KKK would beat these men, would whip these men, would do horrible things to them. These are carpetbaggers. It's kind of the notion of plotting and scheming and trying to make money off of a broken situation. And then the scalawags hated guys like James Longstreet, former Confederate general who serves under Lincoln as a Republican, and the Southern Democrats can't believe it. So scalawags are hated as well. Just an image of the KKK, these brave men in their little white hoods and robes. It's such a joke to me. I think they're all some of the biggest losers in the history of the world. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. But men that are so brave that they terrorize people in the middle of the night by burning crosses and put on these little white hoods and somehow associate it with them being Christian is, to me, one of the worst things that has ever happened in the United States of America. And so the KKK is going to do its best to intimidate the black vote from participating. And they'll grow back in the early 1900s and wield their intimidating power in the South, in the segregated South in the 1900s up until the Civil Rights Movement takes place. And there's still vestiges of it today because, again, like I said, the only way to redeem people is to change their hearts. You can't change their minds before you change their hearts, and people need redemption in a big way. And these soldiers represent the face of the Freedmen's Bureau to keep these factions from beating and killing each other, because there's so many problems from this time period. But as we end up here on this first part, there's also big amendments that come about, and those are the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which I describe more in detail in the second section. But these should help you, and click on the speaker notes to have some more explanations of each one of these. But these should help you understand and answer questions that I posted on LMS for this slideshow. And again, if you have any questions, email me while you're home being quarantined, and I strongly encourage you to look up some videos on Reconstruction. It's a broken, messy time period, and again, there's no way on planet Earth I can cover it in this short of amount of time. But hope you are well, and I hope to see you back again at school soon. And until then, God bless you guys.